All right, guys, so now we're going to look at modules. Modules are very important, especially in web development, because you're constantly bringing in different things. Basically, a module is a file containing a set of functions to include in your application. There's core modules, just core Python modules where you don't have to do anything. You can just bring them in. You have modules that you can install using pip, which is the package manager, including Django. Django is installed with pip and then basically brought in, as well as custom modules, so you can create your own custom files. And I have a file here that I'm gonna bring in and show you how to use. So let's first take a look at using core modules. Okay, so one popular one is date time. So we can say import and then date time. And this has it has a bunch of things associated with it. So it has something called date, which has its own methods. And date actually has a method called today that will get today's date. So let's say we wanted to pull that out. We'll create a variable called today and set it to date time, which we've just brought in, and then dot date and then dot today, okay, which is a method. And then we'll go ahead and print today. And let's run this with Python 3 modules.py, and we get today's date. So seeing that this date belongs to this date time module, we can actually pull this out. We can import it in a different way where we're not importing this entire thing, but we're pulling date out. And the way that we would do that is by saying from date time import date. That way we're just bringing in what we need. So this is what you'll see most of the time. So what we could do now, and I'm just going to copy this because I actually want to leave this so you guys have it as a reference. But what we could do now, since we just brought in date, we imported date, we could just say date.today, and that should work. Okay, if I didn't have this line though, and I just imported date time and I run it, it doesn't know what date is. It's not defined. Okay, so it's very important to know that you can basically pull things out like this. So another example would be the time module. Okay, so we could say import time, and it actually has a method called time. So let's see, I'm just going to create a variable here called timestamp, because that's what it does, is it gives you the timestamp. So I could say time dot time and then print timestamp, and here it is. So this is the timestamp right here. But again, I could actually pull this out by saying from time import time, and then I could get rid of this first one. Okay, so if I run that, I get the same thing. I get the timestamp. All right, so let's take a look at installing something with pip. Okay, and we're going to be using pip quite a bit later. It's a big part of Django development, or basically any kind of web development. So since we didn't create a virtual environment right now and we need to use Python 3, we also need to use pip 3. Okay, so if we want to install something, we use pip 3. I'm actually going to install something very simple. It's called camel case, and it's used to for instance, if we have a string with multiple words, it'll capitalize the first letter of each word. It's just something stupid and simple that I can give you an example with, because I don't want to bring in something that's complicated. So what we do is we would say pip 3 install, and it's called camel case. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that. It says requirement already satisfied, so that means that I already have it installed. Now, there's a command called freeze. If I do pip 3 and then freeze, and we take a look here, this shows me all the packages that are available, that are installed basically, and you'll see camel cases there. Now, what happens when you create a virtual environment, and we'll get into this later, is instead of having all of the stuff that you install global like this, you'll have a specific environment, and whatever you install while you're in that environment will be put in there. But once you exit the environment, it'll no longer be available. It'll only be in that environment. All right, it's very similar to, again, going to JavaScript. It's similar to npm when you install something globally. That's basically what we're looking at here. When you install it locally, it's specific to that project. So that's kind of how virtual environments work with pip. But anyways, we have camel case installed, so we should be able to bring that in just like we could bring any of these in. So I'm just going to go right here and I'm going to say pip module, and I'll say import camel case, and let's go, I'm going to get rid of these prints actually and move that right there. Okay, so let's do camel. I'm just going to create a variable called camel, and I'm going to set it equals to camel case dot camel case, like that. And then let's just create some text. So I'll just put a string and I'll say hello there world, and let's go ahead and print. We'll take that camel variable, and now there's a method called hump, and we can pass in text. And what that should do is make each first letter uppercase. So let's save this, clear this up, and run the modules file, and there we go, hello there world. Okay, which is nothing special. What it's doing isn't important. I just want you to understand that we can install things with pip and then we can import them. Okay, and there's a lot of great modules out there. So now what I want to do is import a custom module. So I have this validator.py file, and this actually imports RE, which is the regular expressions. So this imports a core module and uses it in this custom function, which validates an email address. Okay, so basically we're just saying if the length of whatever's passed in, which should be an email address, is greater than 7, then we want to return either true or false based on this regular expression. Okay, so this is a regular expression that should match, you know, something at something dot whatever, you know, the format of an email address. So I'm going to bring this in, this validator. So I'll go right here and I'll say custom and we're going to do import. I'll do it both ways. So we'll import the entire thing, import validator, and let's go down here and let's create a variable called email, and I'll just say test at test.com, which should pass. And then we're going to do if validator dot, and as you can see there's a method called validate email, so we can access that by saying validate email. It even pops up here in VS Code, and we want to pass in the email. Alright, so we'll go ahead and print email is valid, and then we'll do an else, and we'll print not an email. Okay, we should be able to use it like that. So I'm going to save this. Let's actually get rid of that print so that this is the only thing, and we get email is valid. If I go ahead and put like let's replace that with a number sign and we run it, we get not an email. Alright, so that's working. Now we can do the same thing as we did up here where we basically pulled methods out. We can do that with the validator. I could say from validator I want to just import validate email, and then down here I could get rid of validator dot like that and simply use validate email, and if I run that we get the same thing. It works. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video, guys. In the next one we're going to take a look at classes.